So what's right with yoga? I've become known as a bit of a critic of modern postural yoga. And a few years ago, particularly, I was critical of some of the ways yoga was kind of being commercialized and some of the things that I saw in it and some of the weaknesses of yoga, and ended up developing embodied yoga principles as a result of that in order to offer something else. And since then, it's become quite popular. And there's several groups on Facebook. I see a lot of articles, even in mainstream news, critiquing yoga, talking about the problems with mindfulness, the problems with yoga. And I think it may have even gone too far. Yeah, I remember Carol Horton, someone I really respect, writing an article about this, saying, maybe it's gone too far. So what's right with yoga? Let's look at that. It's just for a change. Let's be kind to poor old yoga. It's been taking a bit of a beating. So, well, first of all, I'd say it's an accessible practice. Yeah. So yoga has spread all over the world and made body-mind practice available, perhaps to more people in human history than has ever happened before. And I'm in Moscow today. I'm normally in Brighton. There's lots of yoga studios around. All around the world I go, I see lots and lots of yoga studios. And I'm not saying it's perfectly accessible, but there's community yoga, there's low-cost yoga, there's ways in which yoga's on the internet. It's accessible as a practice, and that's fantastic. I think that's the first thing to say, that's just great that so many people are doing a body-mind practice. I couldn't imagine, say, Aikido or Tango ever having such a big audience. And there's practical reasons for that. Like, yoga takes up less space. Like, all you need is a mat space and you can practice. For Aikido, you need at least, I'd say, 4 of these per person practicing. Maybe 2 or 3, probably 4. So just in terms of space, if you think of cities like London or New York or Paris, space is at a premium. So that's one practical issue. The other thing I would say is, with yoga, you get a kind of fairly immediate buzz. You can get that little bit of a state change, a bit more relaxed. The level of skill required to do a sort of okay downwards dog is not that high. Now, to do an excellent downwards dog, sure, there's a high learning, a long amount of skill, a large amount of time needed to practice to do that. But just to do a basic one, like many people can do that, or a forwards bend or whatever it is. Not everyone, but many people. Compared to say a difficult martial arts throw or doing a Tai Chi form can really take some time to learn even the basic form. You're not going to learn it in one class for sure. So there's this nice quick learning curve where people get a nice feeling, they feel relaxed, they get a bit of a state change. The fact that it's accessible, it's not too weird, it's become normalized, I think is good. And also, this is just why it's accessible, but what is modern posture yoga good for building as skill sets, right? So for me, I think body awareness. So as a basic body awareness practice, I still recommend it to students. I say, just go to a yoga class, stop making it complicated. Awareness of breath, obviously, is a big part of many classes. Awareness of posture. There's pretty good spectrum there. It tends to be less so on the kind of relational side, but on the just individual body awareness side, which is the foundation for all the other competencies, I would say, with embodied intelligence. It's a pretty good start. Self-regulation, learning to regulate yourself under pressure. That's there. If you're going to a yoga class which is a little bit difficult, a little bit challenging, that's there, right there. And also in terms of safety, there's been a lot of, in the last few years, some studies and books about how dangerous yoga is. Well, yeah, but it's pretty safe. Compare it to any martial art, compare it to a lot of the things that are out there. You could go to a yoga class 100 times and not even, slightly strain a muscle, yeah? So I think in terms of assuming the teachers are reasonably well qualified and it's not being done in a crazy way, like, it's a pretty safe practice. So there's lots right with yoga, both in terms of the traditions that it's coming from, but also yoga in the modern world. There's this tendency to say, oh, modern yoga's corrupt, and there's a very conservative type tendency to be like, oh, it's better in the past. It's like, no, modern yoga is actually great. I think, if anything, yoga is getting better in some ways. I've seen some of the worst, it's a bit controversial, but I've seen some terrible yoga in India, for example. And I think there's a lot right with Western yoga in professionalization, in how people are looking at ethics, and loosening this sort of guru type relationship that you'll see. So there's lots of right with Western yoga. Yes, the Instagram and stuff can go too far, but I'd actually much rather have yoga as it exists in the West than how it existed today, as how it existed in any other period in history, as far as I can see. If I look at yoga that my mother did in the 60s in England, or if I look at what, the ancient hardcore yoga practices, they don't look appropriate to me for the modern world. So Yeah, I think there's lots right with yoga, and if you hear me sometimes wanting more or being critical, that is my personality, to look for more, and I don't want people to think that I don't see lots right with modern yoga, because there's a huge amount in it, and there's a reason I go to just standard modern posture yoga classes myself every week, right? I don't just do like EYP all the time. So yeah, lots right with yoga, let's not forget that. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, you can subscribe to the channel, hit the bell. More importantly, however, get the newsletter. So the newsletter you do, is that right? In the box here? Okay. So why you would want the newsletter? So you hear about the best videos, so you actually ask me questions, you can reply to the newsletter, I'll reply. You can hear about events, teacher trainings, other things that are happening, and stay in touch more reliably. So newsletter there.